My name is Rosalie Plechaty. I've been in South Haven for 13 years. Prior to that, we were in Illinois. And we just moved here not knowing anybody or anything really about the city other than how beautiful it was. My whole life has been in nonprofit. So even my professional career was in nonprofit, and I'm drawn to nonprofit, and I'm drawn to mission statements. So currently, I'm this chairman of the Capital Campaign for Senior Services, and that's taken up a lot of my time. I devoted a lot of time. It's a 3-year campaign we needed to raise over $3 million. So we're still working on that. I do a weekly radio show highlighting nonprofits, which I really love. I find the talent, and then we get to interview them, and it's a local radio station, Cozy. And I'm a Rotarian, which I am very proud to be a Rotarian. We do good work. And I'm a SCORE volunteer, and if you're not familiar with that, that's a national organization that helps businesses and nonprofits, entrepreneurial businesses. So I get to work with all the nonprofit entrepreneurial. I worked for the Hope Parent Resource Center, and what they do there is work with young teen moms and dads, and I really enjoyed my work there. I was a parent educator. I still volunteer for the American Cancer Society, specifically in advocacy, so I get to go to Lansing and I get to go to DC. I'm a longtime member of the Scott Club and past president. I've worked with the Visitors Bureau in the city with some city events. The Sesquicentennial, I had to learn how to say that, and I got to chair the picnic with 1,000 people. So that was really something. And then I've done festivals. I did Festival of the Trees with We Care, but I did Blueberry Festival for 2 years as staff, and then I did the Mermaid Festival, which is, I'm not sure I'll ever put that on my resume really, but it was a lot of fun working with mermaids and pirates. And then one thing, it kind of disbanded because of COVID. I was on a restorative justice committee at Van Buren County, and I believe strongly in restorative justice and prison reform. So that was it was a really good use of my time. Done a lot of church activities. I was on the South Haven Area Community Foundation for 5 years as secretary. That was an amazing experience. And then, believe it or not, I joined up as a Girl Scout leader, being 100 years old, to help out a troop in town. So that's about it for now. I was on Planning Commission for almost 4 years. Now, during my tenure on the Planning Commission, I loved all the people I worked with. I had to learn a lot. It's probably one of the most difficult, well, it is, I think, the most difficult commissions you can get involved with. But staff was great working with us, and they realized that we were lay people and didn't know everything. Of course, and that brings us, of course, to one of the revisions of the short-term rental ordinance. And at that time, I want to say one of the main concerns was safety. There was a lot of talk about safety. The people were going into houses that weren't inspected, that had bedrooms in the attic with no egress, crowding way too many people in a house. So I know that that was one of the biggest tasks we had, was to make it as safe as we could for short-term rental for guests, and that the owners had to really step up, and they all did. Then it kind of came down to, how were we going to limit the short-term rentals and where? But we really had to look at where they were. And so we talked about caps, ratios, and really where should they be? Well, they're sprinkled all over South Haven, both on North Beach and South Beach, primarily along the lake, which you would expect. But then there's also, Ward 2 and the outliers that weren't really experiencing anything. So when we were, at that time, when we were looking at this, we didn't really even have the big LLCs coming in and snatching up houses, which is happening now, and outbidding people that want to buy that house because they have money. So we hadn't experienced that yet, or at least I wasn't that aware of it. I know that tempered my opinion and ultimate vote. So we just looked at a cap and a ratio, and we did it limited to any one specific area. that was a mistake. I can say that as a former commissioner, and I'll own up to it. I think we could have done a better job in using a density and or circumference tool to limit the amount of short-term rentals on a block. And that's where we are today. Well, we moved in 2009, and believe it or not, we looked at the house during Blueberry Fest. And that is our biggest festival. But it was early in the day, and it didn't get crazy yet. And we always enjoyed South Haven as a wonderful summer place to be. We camped when the kids were little, and we would come into town if we could afford it, and always get the ice cream at Sherman's. I mean, that was we always had to do that. But over those years, and I think as the STRs got more prolific, it does change the makeup of your neighborhood. The neighbors that are surrounded by short-term rentals have strangers every week into their neighborhood. And even I've noticed that. And I think the biggest change I wrote down, I know that was going to be a question, the biggest change I've seen is a lack of civility. I've seen that. It's not just here. I don't know if it's the pandemic. I don't know if it's just different generations, and I know there's a generational question here. But there's a lack of civilities. So people walking by my house just throw their trash. They're on vacation. And I get it. I was on vacation in South Haven. I didn't throw my trash. But and just kind of when I walk the dogs on the sidewalk and there's a whole group of people, they don't make room for me. I have to step off, which I often do with my dogs. My dogs are jerks. But there's not even room made for me. Like, I don't exist. And so I think it's that lack of civility. And then, of course, with the short-term rentals come all the bridal parties and the bachelor parties, and those can get nuts. But I was 20 and 30 once as well. What I love to see, though, are still the families with the little ones, because what I realized one day sitting on my porch was we're part of their memories. And they often walk past me saying, "You are so lucky to live here." And I say, "I know. I'm so grateful." So it just depends, day to day. The festivals do get nuts, but I think most of the townies prepare for that. For one thing, they're involved in the festival. That's where a lot of nonprofits make their money. So they're already in the festival, and often their relatives come up for the festival. The festivals are fun. So I just think, I'll just go back to the lack of civility. I was really trying to get that into a sentence. A lot of the people that live here have expressed anger, frustration, a change in their community. So the dialogue has gotten heated, and these issues have been brought up to City Council. And I know City Council has a lot to think about, not just short-term rentals. They're thinking about the whole town. They're thinking about the economics of it. But it has, unfortunately, I think, become rather polarizing is the right word. I think that's a good word to use right now. It's rather polarizing. And it doesn't need to be. I truly don't think it needs to be. Well, I know what we could afford when we were a new family, and it certainly wasn't along the lakefront. I think we're always going to have that disconnect between the lakefront and then further in. Now, I think what further east, I guess I could say, further east, the houses become more affordable for a young family. But what's happening with the housing is that those houses that are suitable get snatched up and then are used commercially. Now, again, this isn't only a South Haven problem. Nationally, housing costs have gone up, whereas our salaries and cost of living hasn't matched. So yes, I think that there is an issue with attainable housing, and that's separate from affordable housing too. We have some great federally and state funded housing, there's always a wait list, and you have to make a certain amount of money or not make a certain amount of money. Then that often leaves out this chunk of people that don't satisfy federal guidelines but can't afford a house, and we don't have enough apartments. You know, I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago, so there were houses, apartments, houses, two flat. So there was a price point for everyone within the community, and we don't have that. So our zoning doesn't allow that. So working with the township is so very important, and I know we are, but it can't happen fast enough. Because as I'm sure you know, or you've heard by now, or everybody else has mentioned it, we don't have enough workers here, and if we had enough workers, we have nowhere for them to live. And so as council and as our staff tries to work and bring companies in, the first thing they look at is, well, do you have workers for us? Well, no, we don't. And as they want to come in, do you have housing for our employees? No, we don't. So all those balls in the air have to be happening at the same time. And I see our property and working for the community. I have the time to work for the community. I'm grateful to my husband that I don't have to support us. We wouldn't be living where we are if I did. So I've always had the opportunity to work within the community. And our community, the average age now is, 56. We're also touted as a retirement community. And so as those things happen, we have less young people. And that's detrimental across the board. Now, the young people that we do have, as far as that's 2 generations from me, are working hard. They're trying to make a living. They probably, I'm guessing, but some of the conversations I've had is that this doesn't affect them. They care about affordable housing, and good jobs. But just like I did in my 20s and 30s, I was raising my family. My world centered around that. And now that I'm 100, my world can center around this. And that's why I love working with young people and getting their opinion. It often changes my perspective. And I appreciate that. But as we talk about nonprofits, since that is my world, so yes, I think there is. And actually their opinions are welcome, and I hope you did that. There's just not a whole lot of young people here. I guess that we just realized, and I will always change the wording, anybody that talks to me when they say we're just a tourist town. No, we are a great community filled with wonderful things, and tourism is our main industry. So, and what we forget about is agriculture. We forget about the manufacturing plants that we do have. But let's face it, tourism is our main industry. And we have a vibrant downtown. And I guess the other thing I'd like to say is people will always come to South Haven, regardless of short-term rentals. I think it makes it really nice for families and people that are vacationing. When we first started coming in the late 70s and early 80s, we camped. We stayed at bed and breakfasts. There weren't those opportunities. And I don't know if I would have used them, now, but I think we just have to remember we're a community first, and that tourism is our industry, and not flip those words.
Thank you.
You're welcome.